Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're doing something I think we all need a little help with sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Figuring out how to actually, value ourselves more. We got a podcast episode from one of you guys.
Yeah, very tough.
It's all about that. So we're
Huge.
going to break it down together, see what we can all learn from it. Sound good?
I'm into it. It's like having, a roadmap for building self-esteem right here, ready to go.
Love that, a roadmap. And you know what I like about this particular episode someone sent in is it's not about get a better job and then you'll feel good or anything external. It's about changing how we see ourselves from the inside.
That's where the real work is,
Yeah.
right? And this episode, it dives right into that. They actually define self-value as, and I wrote this down because it's good, inherent worth, not tied to anything external.
Oh, I like that. How did they phrase it again?
They said, you are worthy of love, respect, and success simply because you exist, not because of what you do or what you achieve.
Whoa. Just sit with that for a second,
Yeah.
Like just existing makes you worthy.
Right. It's a big deal when you really let that sink in.
It is. It's huge. Why do you think that's so hard for us to grasp sometimes?
Well, I think about it like this. We're kind of wired from day one to seek approval, Good grades, sports, getting into the best college. It's always about achieving something to prove your worth.
It's true. You get those gold stars as a kid.
Exactly. So it's like we forget how to just be enough, just as we are, without all the bells and whistles.
And then because of all that, we get stuck in this cycle of I'm not good enough yet, or I have to do more to deserve good things.
Exactly. And that's where, recognizing those negative thoughts becomes super important. The podcast talks about this a lot. How often do we put ourselves down without even realizing it?
Oh, all the time.
Right.
More than we even realize. It's constant.
It's that inner critic just running wild. I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do this, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and those little comments can really eat away at you. The podcast called it...
Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That. It's so true. It could really hold us back if we don't do something about
Oh,
it.
for sure. It's like, imagine you're about to give a big presentation at work, right? If you're stuck in your head thinking, I'm going to mess this up, or I'm not good enough to be up here, chances are you probably will stumble a bit.
Because you're already psyching yourself out.
Right. But what if, instead of those negative thoughts, you told yourself, I'm prepared, I've got this, I'm about to rock this presentation.
Okay, so it's we have to catch ourselves in those moments when we're being super negative and consciously reroute.
Exactly. It's like mental training. The more you practice catching those negative thoughts and flipping the script, the easier it becomes. But how do we even start to, notice those thoughts in the first place? They're so automatic sometimes,
Absolutely, yeah. One of the simplest ways is to actually start writing them down. Keep a little journal for a day or two and just jot down those negative thoughts as they pop up. Oh, that's a good idea.
Seeing them in black and white can be really eye-opening, and it helps you start to see, hold on, are these thoughts even true? Or are they just old, unhelpful patterns playing on repeat?
It's like holding up a mirror to our own brains. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what's going on in there.
Totally. And once you start recognizing those thought patterns, you can start changing them.
And speaking of changing things up, I thought it was really cool how the podcast talked about the power of saying no. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect.
Oh yeah, they said something like, saying no doesn't make you a bad person to anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself.
Okay, I love that analogy. It's so true.
Right. And speaking of self-care, something else this podcast really emphasized was celebrating your wins, which I thought was such a good point. Even the small wins.
And that's huge. How often do we just power through our to-do lists without stopping to acknowledge what we've accomplished? I'm totally guilty of this.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle, always striving for the next goal, that we forget to pause and appreciate how far we've come. But celebrating those wins, big or small, it's like giving yourself permission to feel good about yourself, to recognize your own efforts.
Yeah, it's if we're not going to celebrate ourselves, who will?
Exactly. And it can be so simple. Finished a challenging workout. Win. Finally cleaned out that junk drawer. Win. Cooked a delicious meal. Win, win, win.
Okay, but what if you're someone who really struggles with feeling proud of themselves? What would you say to them?
I'd say start small. What's one thing, even a tiny thing, that you accomplished today that you could acknowledge? Maybe you got out of bed even though you felt exhausted. That counts. Celebrate that small victory and notice how it makes you feel. Even a little shift in perspective can make a big difference.
I love that. Okay, now we have to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to self-value, which is, of course, comparison. And this podcast did not shy away from that. They even said comparison is the thief of joy. And, especially in the age of social media.
Oh, social media can be a minefield, right?
It's brutal out there.
It is. It's like everyone else's highlight reel on constant loop. And we're over here comparing our behind-the-scenes struggles to their perfectly curated lives.
It's like comparing our worst days to their best days and then wondering why we feel so inadequate. But you can't compare your whole life to someone's carefully curated online persona.
You just can't. It's not a fair comparison. And it's important to remember that everyone is fighting their own battles, even if they're not posting about it online.
So true. So what can we do about it? How do we avoid getting sucked into that comparison trap, especially when social media is designed to keep us scrolling and comparing? It's like we're all trying to measure up to some impossible standard that doesn't even exist.
Totally. And you know what I think makes it even harder? It's not even real life. It's like people are literally filtering and photoshopping their photos, crafting these perfect captions.
That's all smoke and mirrors, really. So how do we break free?
Honestly, I think it starts with being really intentional about who and what you're letting into your social media feeds.
Oh, that's so important. It's like, are you following people who make you feel inspired and uplifted, or are they just making you feel bad about yourself?
Exactly. And I know it's hard because sometimes it's like your friends and family posting stuff that makes you feel icky,
The worst.
But you have the power to unfollow, mute, whatever you need to do to protect your own energy.
It's about creating a digital space that nourishes you, not depletes you.
100%. Okay, can I share one more thing I loved from this podcast? Because it really hit home for me.
Of course, yeah. Lay it on us.
They talked about how we don't have to be perfect to be valuable. Embracing our imperfections is actually a huge part of self-acceptance.
Oh, tell me more about that.
We live in this culture where it's be perfect, have it all together, don't mess up.
Right, failure's not an option.
Which is totally unrealistic.
And kind of boring if you think about it,
Yeah.
right? If we were all perfect, wouldn't life be so predictable?
Exactly. It's our imperfections, our quirks, our mistakes. That's what makes us interesting. That's what makes us human.
You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen those Japanese bowls? Kintsugi, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah, with the gold?
Yes, where they, repair the cracks with gold so the imperfections are, highlighted and celebrated.
I love that. It's those cracks. It's a good one.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned a lot and, more importantly, that you'll take some of these insights to heart and start valuing yourselves even more. We'll see you next time.